On Friday, April 3rd, after the market close, Delta Airlines fell another approximately 10% after hours, after it was announced that Warren Buffett sold about 13 million shares of his holdings in Delta Airlines. In this video, I'm going to talk about likely why he did it and show what he was just talking about as early as not even a month ago, how he was bullish on the airlines, and now here he is not even a month later selling a large portion of his stake in not only Delta but also Southwest Airlines. So it's another example of why you shouldn't listen to the experts, even the richest man in the world sometimes, because they're always talking their book, and what they're saying one day may be the complete opposite of what they're doing the next day, and I'll show you in this video here. So here is the news that Warren Buffett sold 13 million Delta shares for about 314 million and 2.3 million Southwest shares for 74 million. This brought his total holdings down below 10% of Delta and 10% of Southwest, which is very important, which I'll explain later why it's important for him to get those holdings down below 10%. But first, let's look at a video of him 1 year ago talking about, just like I talked about in my video of Boeing, how when things were going good, they were borrowing money to buy back stock to enrich the executives and the shareholders. Buffett himself in this interview is talking about how happy he was that Delta was buying back shares just a year ago with borrowed money, and that's what actually brought him over the 10% threshold of ownership. Buffett didn't intend to go 10% over, but once he did, he was happy with it and he continued buying. So let's check out this video clip of just 1 year ago, March 28th, 2019.
When I just talked to you a couple of months ago, you said you generally try not to push above 10%. What happened?
Well, that was an interesting situation. Delta made an appearance, I don't know, 3 weeks ago or at some investment conference, and I think they announced they bought in 26 or 27 million shares and borrowed $1 billion to do it. Well, I like that from two aspects. They bought in 4% of their stock, so all of a sudden we own 4% more of Delta than we had the day before. I like the fact they were willing to borrow $1 billion to accelerate a stock repurchase program. But what I didn't realize was that purchase had taken us over 10%, so I was already in territory that I didn't plan to get, so I just decided to buy a whole lot more stock.
So you see in that video that he was happy that they borrowed $1 billion to buy back stock and thought it was a great idea, at least then while the stock was going up. But now that's $1 billion less that they have in debt and don't have in reserve, and they're burning $60 million a day. So that $1 billion is going to be up in smoke in 2 weeks. But anyway, let's look at the purchase he made on February 27th, just about 1 month before he dumped a whole bunch of stock 2 days ago. Was it really a purchase? Not really. If you look at it, let's take a look at this purchase that he made when the stock was going down, when the first talk of coronavirus shutting things down was really starting to get on people's minds, and they started selling the stock. Delta stock, the high was recently $63. That's the 52-week high. Here he was buying stock at $46. So that is about 30% off of the high, the all-time high. Why am I saying that it wasn't really a purchase? Because he bought $43 million worth at $46, okay? that is less than 1.5% of his already 71 million shares that he had. So he had 71 million, and then he bought another approximately 1 million. So that's less than 1.5%. So imagine if you really liked the stock and you had 100 shares of this stock and it fell about 30% off of the high, would you buy only one more share to add to your 100 shares? Because that's effectively what Warren Buffett did. He basically added one share to his 100 shares, 1%, 1.5%. It's a drop in a bucket. His position at the time, this valuation was $3 billion. So to spend $45 million more on stock, it's more of kind of a show and kind of for the masses to show that he's still confident in Delta stock. It's almost like when stocks crash a lot, you see the CEOs and the CFOs, they make public purchases of the stock, but it's usually a small amount that is not really is not going to break the bank for them. It's just kind of a show, and that's what this is to me. He just bought this 1.5% so that he can advertise that he's buying back more stock as it goes down. And, maybe hopefully that this is the end of it and other people come in and buy because they see that he's buying. And so it gives the stock a vote of confidence. And here's a quote that he said that was kind of foretelling. Where is that? Okay. This is right after he bought this additional 1.5% of stock after it fell about 30% off its high and 20% in 1 week. And he says, "Who wouldn't rather buy at a lower price than a higher price?" Buffett asked in a CNBC interview this week. Investors should want the stock market to go down. They should want to buy at a lower price. Okay, well, that's what he's saying publicly, but just not even 1 month later, he's selling off a large portion of his Delta stock. So what is going on with that? And let's see what he said in another interview on March 13th about Airline Stocks, less than 1 month before he sold a large portion of his Delta stock.
But there will be interruptions, and I don't know when they will occur, and I don't know how deep they will occur. I do know they will occur from time to time, and I also know that we'll come out better on the other end.
So it doesn't sound like you're selling airline stocks today.
I won't be selling airline stocks.
So why did Warren Buffett change his mind just 20 days later after laughing at the thought of selling airline stocks as if it was absurd? Probably just because how much worse it seems it has gotten. And here's some latest stats on Delta's volume, how much it's dried up. They flew on this Saturday 38,000 people, when normally in late March on a Saturday they fly 600,000 people. So that is a huge drop. And they also said that they expect their second quarter revenue to fall 90%, which is also huge. And United Airlines, their revenue is down $1 million a day. So things have gotten from bad to worse. And I know Warren Buffett says to be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful, and made that comment about, you should like the stock market to go down because you could buy stocks cheaper and all that. Well, sometimes maybe people are not fearful enough, and so he got out before they get even more fearful. I don't know, but so what does this all mean for Delta and Warren Buffett and his stake in the company? So back to that 10% number. 10% is a threshold that if you own a company 10% or more, you have to file with the SEC and you have to notify them within 2 days of buying or selling stock. And so he sold the stock that he sold the other day, brought him under the 10% threshold. So now he no longer has to notify the SEC within 2 days and make it public that he sold or bought stock. So now he only has to wait. He only has to report 45 days after the end of the quarter. So what that means is, after this sell-off right here, he could sell the whole rest of his position, whatever 60 million is left, and not have to report it until sometime in mid-May. And by that time, who knows where Delta stock will be. As for people who might think that maybe he's going to buy an airline like Delta, well, he's not really a day trader, so if he was thinking of that, I don't think he'd be buying stock 1 month and selling it the next month and then trying to buy the whole company a month after that. I would guess that he's probably a lot more bearish now that the reality with the coronavirus has gotten worse, and so maybe he's going to sell down more of his position, or maybe get rid of it completely. Who knows? If he does buy an airline or two, it will only be with the blessing of the U.S. government, with some kind of backstop, like he normally does when there's a financial crisis. He gets a kind of a backstop from the government, and that's when he invests, like he did with Goldman Sachs and some other companies. So if he were to do that, he would make sure that he was covered pretty much. So I think maybe he doesn't see that yet. And here he said in Barron's just on March 3rd that about his possibility of buying an airline, and he said that it'd be very unlikely that we would do that. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's complicated. Asked why, he said, for one thing, regulated, and there's an interplay. I'll just give you an example, not that we would be doing, but with Delta, we own 18% of American Express, and American Express is a bank holding company, and bank holding companies have limits as to what they can do. So all this stuff, the regulation and the banks that are, intertwined with his other investments and everything. So Buffett suggested that 15% might be the limit on his ownership. Now, of course, you see how quickly he changes his mind. So anything is possible, but again, the takeaway from all of this is, number one, don't listen to what people say when they come out onto these financial programs or these articles, because they're always touting whatever's in their financial interest. In Buffett's case, he's touting Delta Airlines because he has a position in it. Meanwhile, within not even a month later, he's selling the thing. So you can never tell, and he has a right to buy or sell whatever stocks he wants whenever he wants. And he's not going to give you a call to let you know, hey, I know I told you to buy Delta on CNBC last month, but I'm going to be selling mine because I turned really bearish on it, so you should probably sell yours too. You're not going to get that call. You'll be lucky if you see it in the filings 45 days later and find out that he sold most or all of his stock. So that's the reason why you should never follow these guys or anybody who gives you a stock tip, because their reasons are not the same reasons you may have to buy it or to hold it, or how much to buy or how much to hold. So if you want to follow Buffett's advice in real time, then buy Berkshire Hathaway stock, and then you'll get whatever benefits of whatever investments he makes. And whenever he decides to buy, whenever he decides to sell, you won't find out about it 45 days later. I mean, you'll find out about it 45 days later, but your stock will reflect it immediately. So don't try to piggyback on other people, and it's a lot of people do it because it's easy, because you say, if Delta's good enough for Buffett, it's good enough for me. And he obviously knows more than I do, so I'll just buy it because he's buying it. Because like I said, when he sells it, you may not find out about it until way much later, and it could be a lot lower. And that doesn't just go for Delta, that goes for any stock. I hope you learned something from this video, and if you liked it, give me a thumbs up, and please leave me a comment if you bought Delta stock either because Warren Buffett bought it or partially because he bought it, and what do you think about it now that he has been selling a large portion of his stock? Are you going to sell yours? Let me know in the comments below, and if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.